Good morning. It's been a bit of a mess lately, hasn't it? Our global, national, and local lives have been disrupted by so much. A worldwide pandemic, economic recessions, governmental transitions like we've never seen, and the list goes on. And in this time of crisis, as well as the isolation it forces, we need community. We also need balance. There is so much to lament and mourn, and we must. But we cannot only do that. We also need to find ways to cultivate joy, to laugh, to joke, to encourage one another to live and enjoy life. So we're focusing this week on the spirituality of silliness. This is to honor our reality and the positive role that humor can play and must play in our lives. Come to worship today as lightly as you can. Come ready to reflect on balance, on levity, and on other things we haven't had enough time for in this time of extended global crisis. We welcome you to come and to be free. I brought my dinosaurs. They're here to encourage you to enjoy while watching Oh to Joy, the Muppets version. Yep.
Good morning. My name is Karma Amos, and I am honored to serve as the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Central Delaware and to welcome you to worship this morning. Whether it's your first time with us or attending our Sunday services as part of your regular routine, we are glad that you're here and hope you'll find room in this community for your spirit. We continue to be grateful for the technology that allows us to worship together online and to continue to build community in other ways. Thank you in advance for your patience and grace with any delays or glitches that we might experience. They should only last as long as it might for someone to move from their seat to the podium when we gather in person. In addition to our worship each Sunday at 10, we meet on Tuesday nights at 7 for a more informal time of check-in and sharing. Please consider joining us for that gathering as well. And for all of our connections, we encourage you to invite a friend to join you and get to know our UUCD community. There's certainly room in our hearts and our space for more people who are searching for a liberal, diverse, non-judgmental spiritual community. Now I invite you to take a deep breath and listen to these sincere words of welcome. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever your religious beliefs are or aren't, and wherever you are physically on the planet right now, you are welcome in this spiritual community. However you move in the world, how much or how little is in your bank account or wallet, and however you're feeling in this moment, you and all of who you are welcome in this spiritual community. We are all enhanced by being together.
We'll be lighting the chalice this morning with these words from Kenneth Patton. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips.
Let us love the world through heart and mind and body.
We feed our hearts upon the mystery and revelation we find in the faces of our brothers and sisters.
We seek to know the wistfulness of the very young and the very old, the wistfulness of people in all times and seasons of life.
We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, and the anguish behind cruelty.
All of life flows into a great common life if we will only open our hearts to our companions.
Let us worship not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears.
Let us worship with the opening of all of the windows of our being, with the full outstretching of our spirits.
Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body.
Life comes to those who have fallen in love with life. May the light of this chalice illuminate our love for life.
Please join us for our unison affirmation. Words should be in the chat box. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
You may wish to sing, dance, or whatever along with our first hymn in your very own environment. You may be as uninhibited as you like. This will be followed closely by the story for all ages. So if you have children, please invite them to watch. Alternatively, you can activate your child within. When the Spirit says do,
Why didn't the potato cross the road? Because it's a potato and it doesn't have legs. Good joke, Squeaks. Oh, it feels good to laugh. We laugh pretty much every day. But what is laughing anyway? Why do we make this weird noise when we're happy or think something is funny? Scientists have found that we use laughter as a form of communication. Communication means talking and sending messages to each other. When we laugh, we're communicating with the world around us. It helps us connect to other people and strengthens our relationships. And even though we usually laugh without even thinking about it, it's actually kind of a complicated thing for our bodies to do. When you laugh, your body uses 15 different facial muscles, and your upper lip gets turned up. Your windpipe, which you use to breathe, is partially covered up, which makes you gasp. Sometimes when you're laughing really hard, it becomes harder to breathe, so you turn red or purple, and you might even get tears in your eyes too, but they're happy tears. Meanwhile, your brain gets excited, and so do your arms, legs, and stomach muscles. And of course, when you laugh, you make a sound. There is a lot going on. All kinds of situations can make us laugh. Sometimes it might be silly things that don't go together, like putting a hat on a hamster. Or sometimes it might be relief, because something that made us stressed or worried is finally over. Sometimes laughing can tell the people around us that we feel safe and happy with them. Or it might even be a response to being tickled. And even though funny things make us laugh, most of the time when we laugh, it's for a different reason. Usually, we're laughing at our own words. So I'm a lot more likely to laugh after saying something not too funny, like Squeaks and I went exploring today, than if Squeaks tells me a joke. Not that I don't like your jokes, Squeaks. It's nothing personal. It's science. And even though laughter feels like the sort of thing that happens suddenly and unexpectedly, it turns out that most laughter happens during natural breaks in our conversation, and people don't usually laugh when they're alone. But when you're with friends, laughter can be contagious. When people say something is contagious or catching, they're usually talking about germs, like how everyone in your class seems to get each other sick at the same time. You don't laugh because of germs, of course, but if your friend starts laughing, you can catch their laughter. It helps you tell the people around you that you feel comfortable and want to be part of the group. So one person laughing can sometimes mean that a whole bunch of people will start laughing too. Some scientists think that a long time ago, ancient humans developed the ability to laugh even before they started using words. Even then, laughing would have helped to show that we feel safe and comfortable and help connect people to each other. Making connections with people and forming groups can sometimes mean that some people get included in a group while some people feel left out, which may explain why a group of people being mean to someone can seem funny at first. Sometimes people might feel like they want to laugh at something bad happening to someone else. But even though it can feel like you're not laughing on purpose, we always try to be careful about how we treat other people. Laughing feels great when you're using it nicely. Laughing to connect to other people is a very human activity, but some other animals do it too. Some apes have an open-mouthed play face, and they make a panting sound that's similar to the ha-has we make when we laugh. Even rats do something that's like laughing too. Babies who haven't learned to use words yet can also laugh. And babies and apes laugh at similar things, like playing and tickling. Have you ever heard someone say that laughter is the best medicine? That's because the best part about laughing is not just that it feels good, it's good for you. People who laugh a lot are more likely to have healthy hearts, and they tend not to get sick as much. Laughing also probably means you're living a fun life and have connections with people you like, which is healthy too. And that sounds like a great reason to have a good laugh. I don't know, Squeaks. What fruit do sheep like best? Bananas? That is your best joke yet. Good one, Squeaks. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions about laughing or jokes you want to send us, we'd love to hear them. Just grab a grown-up and send us a message at patreon.com/SciShowKids. And we'll see you next time here at the Fort.
Well, laughter, jokes, and general silliness can also be a way that we keep ourselves humble by noticing some of our unique characteristics or some of the things we do that seem quite odd to others. For our UU moment today, we'll be sharing a small sample of some Unitarian Universalist jokes. Since we're on Zoom, we'll ask you to laugh loudly in your own environment. Lee,
Yes.
why did the Unitarian Universalists cross the road?
Well, it's very simple to get to the other side.
No, to support the chicken in its search for its own path.
Huh.
So, Lee,
Yes,
why can't you sing very well in choirs?
because they can't read.
No, because they're always reading ahead to see if they agree with the next verse.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Huh. So in the words of a very famous New York City comedian, not our daughter, although she is a New York City comedian, not quite that famous, Lenny Bruce actually made fun of the Unitarians. And he said, I know my humor is outrageous when it makes the Unitarians so mad they burn a question mark on my front lawn. So, a couple more jokes for you here. So what do you do? What do you get when you cross a UU with a Jehovah's Witness?
Someone who knocks on your door for no apparent reason.
Hello. What do you get when you cross a UU or with a Jehovah's Witness?
Someone who knocks on your door to learn about your religion.
Oh, that makes sense. And then the last one, what do you get when you cross a UU with a Jehovah's Witness?
Wow, someone who knocks on your door to offer you coffee.
All right. All right. So how many Unitarians does it take to change a light bulb?
Well, we choose not to make a statement either in favor of or against the need for a light bulb. However, if in your own journey you have found that light bulbs work for you, that's wonderful. You're invited to write a poem or compose a modern dance about your personal relationship with your light bulb.
Okay.
Present it next month at our annual Light Bulb Sunday service, in which we will explore a number of light bulb traditions, including incandescent, fluorescent, three-way,
We got three ways.
long
We got
light,
clear.
and tinted,
We got energy saver lights.
all of them, all of which are equally valid paths to luminescence. Bye-bye.
It is now our time of joys and concerns when we offer one another the opportunity to share very briefly what is most on our hearts right now, life's celebrations and concerns. As you do so, we invite you to light a candle in your own space or a virtual candle. Through the action of sharing and kindling a flame, we give energy to our best thoughts, meditations, sympathies, celebrations, and prayers. We hold these as sacred in our collective hearts. At this time, we invite you to change your view to gallery view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen so that you can see everyone who is here. As you feel led, please unmute your microphone and share your joys or concern and light your candle if you have one. You can watch the mute signals on the lower left of each person's video stream to see if anyone else is unmuted, because it's best if we share one at a time. Please mute your mic after you have shared. If there are no more joys or concerns, I guess I would like to light this candle not only for those joys and concerns not spoken by those of us here and in solidarity with others in our community who couldn't be with us today, but also for this service, because I think I really needed this. I'm way too serious, and it's a good idea to be reminded of all of the important benefits of laughter and to laugh long and hard every day. Thanks, Wendy.
A central part of our worship, in person and online, is the opportunity we all have to practice the art of generosity and the spiritual practice of gratitude. Our gifts to UUCD are what allow this congregation to thrive with a common vision to nurture our spirits, build community, and change the world. We are grateful to you for the many ways you support our community, including your financial pledges and offerings. Your gifts matter, and it's one of the ways that you make this world a better place. Thank you for your passion and your generosity. For those who are making pledges or want to contribute to this community, you may continue to write checks and mail them to us, or you can give online. There are instructions to do both of these things on our website at uucd.org. Just click Support UUCD on the menu bar or the Donate link on any page. You can do that now or at any time that's convenient. Please enjoy this rather different version of the Hallelujah Chorus by the Silent Monks, accompanied by the London Philharmonic Choir and Orchestra. Thank you.
For our centering this morning, I'll be reading a poem called Worry by Jane Marla Robbins in Poems of the Laughing Buddha. Please, could I not take everything so seriously and be at least a bit like you, my laughing Buddha. You laugh at it all. Sunshine, earthquakes. You laugh if it rains, if it floods, you laugh, as if knowing that in spite of it, or that because of it, that all will be well. I mean to let go worrying. I sense that all this worrying is just the same as saying prayers for all the things that make me scared. Let me focus instead on your ample belly. Think of all the perfect food that you have loved and that you love, of how delicious it all is, has been, and be a witness to your bodies celebrating it so visibly, roundly. The tastiness, spiciness, the chicken dumplings, wines, the breads and sweet cakes, all sustenance for life. Let me focus on your ample belly, proof that you have had enough and have enough. And let me understand that I too have enough and always will. I see you there so happy in my garden, the wooden ducks I gave my mother, bleached and weathered at your side. Unlike your solid stone, untethered ballast, strong as the courage that I seek, courage untethered and immutable. Lindsay will now provide a brief reading from Tom Rosshirt.
Yes. Today's reading is an excerpt from Tom Rosshirt in Maria Shriver's The Sunday Paper. So what's the best way to climb out of a dark place when you're not sure you really want to? A lot of approaches are possible. Deep breathing, reciting a sacred word, turning to a favorite thought, doing a positive activity. But I've found that for me, the most effective approach for switching off the negative and turning on the positive is laughter. For a time, I wondered if laughter wasn't just an act of denial, but grief counselor Ted Ward, who lost his little brother in a boating accident, then his young wife to cancer, then his 2 little girls in a car accident, told me that laughter isn't an effort to deny grief or bypass loss. Laughter recognizes the loss, he said, but it expands the event to bring in hope to help the healing. A few days later, I wrote to a friend, I think one of the secrets is laughter, and a good way to get to laughter is being silly, and being silly is hard for people who are too attached to their dignity, like me, but wow, is it helpful. She wrote back, yes, that's so novel. The danger of evil is that it consumes us and makes us think that laughter, silliness, and love are irresponsible. Let's turn that thinking on its head.
So we're focusing on the spirituality of silliness, or the holiness of humor, or the piety of play, because it seemed like the right thing to do today. It's been a tough time lately, and we have recently been focusing in worship on some really important but fairly heavy topics. Consequently, now feels like a good time to seek some balance by swinging the pendulum in a different direction and focusing on a lighter topic that doesn't typically get much spiritual airtime. And that is the role that silliness and humor play in our lives generally, and also in our spiritual lives in particular. There's often a presumption that to be holy or reverent or enlightened or whatever other word you might use to describe a spiritually evolved person, that means one must be serious, restrained, and frankly, somewhat stuffy. The kind of people who are often called the frozen chosen. It's quite popular to think that one should be quiet as a church mouse or appropriate or proper to be a good religious person, right? At least as adults. It's somewhat more acceptable for children to have fun in church, else they would surely flee as quickly as they had choice or opportunity. I remember how much fun Sunday school and church camp was when I was a child, at least much of the time, because I got to sing funny songs, eat snacks during the lesson, and create religious masterpieces, I assure you, masterpieces out of macaroni and string. My first performance as an entertainer on the big stage was in church when I was 4 or 5 years old, I imagine. And my big number was a little song called I Am a Promise. And I performed it, imagining myself with a feather boa, sequins, a shimmy, and somewhat burlesque sound effects. Like to hear it? Here it goes. I am a promise. I am a possibility. I am a promise with a capital P. I am a great big bundle of potentiality. Bum ba dum bump, and I am learning to hear God's voice, and I am trying to make the right choice. I am a promise to be anything God wants me to be. I was admittedly much cuter at 5, but it's a good memory. And this week, as I was thinking back to the time when fun and frivolity was central to my faith formation, I recalled a number of equally silly songs, like, give me oil in my Ford, keep me trucking for the Lord. Give me oil in my Ford, I pray, honk, honk. Or the somewhat more popular, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart to stay. There is more, but I'll spare you. On a side note, I so regret that I remember the words to these little ditties, as well as hundreds of theologically dreadful hymns, but cannot remember where I left my keys. Wouldn't it be great to be able to choose which files are stored on our biological hard drives? But I digress. The sad thing is that silliness and humor and fun are actually not antithetical to authentic, deep, and vibrant spirituality. Not at all. In fact, I think we've gone a bit off track, a bit wonky, if you will, by placing these equally valuable things, play and piety, at odds with each other. They are, in truth, essential to one another and to the development of a holistic, balanced, integrated life. Interestingly, it wasn't always the case that silliness was thought of as anathema to spirituality. The word silly itself has a rich history. The etymology dictionary, based on Webster's, tells us that the word silly's considerable sense development moved from around circa 1200, from happy to blessed to pious to innocent. And then late in the 13th century to harmless, to pitiable, then to weak. Then in the 1570s, to feeble in mind, lacking in reason, foolish. It further trended towards stunned or dazed as by a blow, like not silly, in the late 1880s. Silly season in journalism slang is from the late 1880s as well, August and September, when newspapers compensate for a lack of hard news by filling up with so-called trivial stories. It is a long way from happy, pious, and blessed to feeble, foolish, and trivial. There are, however, many spiritual leaders who claim that silliness needs to be reclaimed as a spiritual practice. They note the elevated role that silliness, laughter, and play have held in a variety of religious traditions before they got too serious. Reverend Dr. June Maffin, she is an ordained minister in the Anglican Church of Canada, an author, a spiritual director, an international consultant on women's spirituality and other things. She includes a pretty good recap or touchstones of that history in some of her writing. She notes, for example, that many faith traditions, including Christian and Hasidic storytellers, Zen masters, Taoist sages, routinely encourage us not to take ourselves too seriously. The most recognized and revered figure in the Unitarian movement, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said, "It is a happy talent to know how to play." And he certainly understood playfulness as a key component of a full spiritual life. When Hindus speak of the creation of the universe, they don't call it the work of God, they call it the play of God. Native Americans conceive of the coyote as the trickster, a spiritual figure that ushers in insight through playfulness. And from antiquity through today, in many religious traditions, as well as in art and literature, there is the archetypal character of the holy fool, the one who is seen as whimsical, perhaps a bit simple and childlike, unconcerned with being respectable and serious, a jester of sorts. And paradoxically, most of the time, someone who is also depicted as being deeply spiritual and wise, usually much more so than the ones laughing at them. The holy fool is the kind of person who can shock others out of their haughty cerebralness, their academic certainty, often their arrogance as well, with gentle pranks, simple riddles, jokes, general silliness and laughter, all the while summoning them to a deeper wisdom and humility. I don't know if you've read the internationally best-selling fable by Noah Ben Shea called Jacob the Baker, but since I was first introduced to it in seminary, it's been a favorite. It's the story of a very simple baker named Jacob who would write down his thoughts on little strips of paper each morning as he waited for the bread to rise. And one day, a slip of paper accidentally found its way into a loaf, and the person who bought the loaf discovered that little nugget of wisdom later and thought it was the greatest thing. You might call it something like a Jewish fortune cookie. And so soon people from all over the village came to the bakery, not only for the bread, but also for the wisdom. His teachings became very popular and widespread. I'd like to share with you just one short encounter Jacob had with some children who were laughing at him after he asked the question what they saw when they closed their eyes. "When I shut my eyes," one of the children snickered, "I don't see anything." "What you see is your ignorance," said Jacob, turning his head toward the child. "And when we cannot find our ignorance, you can be sure we have lost our wisdom." The child's sarcasm dissolved into innocence. "I was making a joke," they said, "but now I think you're laughing at me." "Let me tell you a story," said Jacob, his voice calming the child as the story began. "Once there was a fool who set out for the king's palace. And along the way, people pointed and jeered at the fool. 'Why should a man like you be going to see the king?' they laughed. 'Well, I'm going to be the king's teacher,' answered the fool with great assurance. But his conviction only brought even greater laughter from people along the path. When the fool arrived at the palace, the king thought he would make short work and great jest of this man. So the king had the fool immediately brought to the royal court. 'Why do you dare disturb the king?' he demanded. 'I come to be the royal teacher,' said the fool in a very matter-of-fact manner. The king twisted with laughter. 'How can you, a fool, teach me?' 'You see,' said the fool, 'already you're asking me questions.' The court froze, silent. The king gathered himself and stared at his ridiculous opponent. 'You have offered a very clever response, but you have not answered my questions.' 'Only a fool has all the answers,' came the reply, balanced on a shy smile. But now the king was sputtering. 'But what would others say if they knew the king had a fool for a teacher?' 'Better to have a fool for a teacher than a fool for a king,' said the fool. And when he heard this, the king, who was not a bad man, confessed, 'Well, now I do feel like a fool.' 'No,' said the man across from him. 'It is only a fool who has never felt like one.' The children laughed, and Jacob felt as if he were standing in front of the little heater in his home. silliness, perhaps both blessed and foolish, can help unstick us when we are stuck, bring us back to a childlike innocence and openness. It can flip things upside down and turn them around when we most need that to happen. And yet, we tend to avoid it as we mature and as we grow to think ourselves wise and as we strive for more and more respectability. So what gets in the way? What gets in the way of us being silly? What's the biggest obstacle? Tom Roschert, the author of the reading that Lindsay read earlier, says that first and foremost, it's embarrassment. Embarrassment and its counterpart, shame. He says, silliness draws out shame in order to defeat it. Silliness is rebellion. Silliness is being daring, being defenseless, being vulnerable. Silliness is dropping the mask. It's an act of faith, a mark of trust, even when it's only you with yourself. But when silliness is shared, it's intimacy, it's magic. Once you feel the joy of being silly, it's easier to share because it's harder to hold in, like a happy child who starts to skip. Yet none of this changes the fact that being silly can feel so weird and so very undignified. Because we have so internalized the negative aspects of being silly, most of us are so afraid of appearing foolish that we'll do anything to avoid it. Yet it is to our great detriment if we do so. I'm convinced that we really do need to redevelop, recultivate, or for some of us, develop for the first time, a practice of being silly, of being undignified from time to time, and of playing. Dr. Maffin argues that playing is as sacred as music and silence and solemnity, and that when we play, we enjoy the fullness of life with its curiosities, frivolities, and insensibilities. When we don't take ourselves too seriously, some would say that we are praying. And like prayer, laughter and play can be healing to the body, mind, and soul. Laughter and play are already holy things that help us leave behind daily stressors and allow our spirits to breathe and recreate. I think she's right. Now, we say it is spiritual practice to be silly because it means we have to intentionally and repeatedly work on it, mindfully work on being silly. We have to work hard, some of us harder, to overcome our fears of appearing foolish. We have to try to let go of overly fragile adult egos. We have to recall what it's like to be a kid, to have a food fight, to make a mud pie or play in puddles. These are not age-restricted activities. We also might do well to simply try to be the kind of adults who stand in the grocery line making funny faces at babies just to see them smile. The spirituality of silliness is a real thing. It's a thing we don't think about often enough, that we sometimes don't think of as being as deep and meaningful as it can be. And it's something that we need to reclaim to find balance in life, especially in times like these. Life is much too difficult, conflicted, and chaotic for us not to. So in the spirit of silliness, I want to close with a few bad jokes. First of all, would you like to hear a construction joke? I assume you say yes. Well, I'm sorry, I'm still working on it. Why do ducks have feathers? To cover their butt quacks, of course. What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One is very heavy. The other is a little lighter. When does a joke become a dad joke? Punchline first. When it becomes apparent. Did you hear about the cheese factory that exploded in France? There was nothing left but debris. Debris, get it? And finally, what did the Buddhist say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. My hope for all of us is that we might risk being silly, ridiculous, appearing foolish, and being playful this week, whether on our own or with others. I also hope that we might keep up that practice, again, both alone and together, specifically because it will help us fulfill the first part of our collective mission, to nurture our spirits. As a bonus, you may now honestly tell your friends that your minister employed you to go play with yourself. May it be so.
Please join us in extinguishing the chalice. The words should be in the chat box. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Now, may you go forth from this gathering a little lighter, a little laughier, a little more committed to the spiritual practice of silliness, and a little more grounded in humility and levity and joy. Amen. Our virtual worship has ended, but our connection to one another and the earth endures. Go blessed to be a blessing for others.